When we first started raising chickens, we thought all we had to do was buy laying hens, and then when they got too old to lay, we would butcher them, and there you go, there we'd have our meat. But it turns out that that's not really the most efficient way to produce meat, because you're not gonna really butcher laying hens that often, like maybe once every 3 or 4 years. So we do have laying hens here on the farm, but we don't typically eat them unless they're really old and we're using them for stewing meat. So how we raise meat here on our 1-acre farm is we purchase meat chickens. There are a few different kinds of breeds of meat chickens. The standard chicken that most people raise is the Cornish cross. This is a meat producing chicken because it is bred to get big and to produce lots of meat on its bones. There are some cons though. They get really big, they're really aggressive, they're bred to search for food all the time and to eat tons of it. So you'll end up with chickens that get big really fast. They're kind of messy, they're kind of lazy. They're not my favorite. But occasionally we do raise them, and actually that's the breed that we chose to raise this year because we decided to go in on a farm group purchase because it was just cheaper that way. But I now know I will never again do that because I prefer heritage breeds for meat. So first things first, you've got to figure out which breed you're going to choose. For us, we have done the Cornish cross, and then we've also done the Freedom Rangers, which if I had to choose, I would choose Freedom Rangers. The cons of having a Freedom Ranger is that they're going to take longer to get bigger because they're not insane hungry beasts like the Cornish cross. So you're going to need to expect about 16 weeks of feeding those Freedom Rangers, which can be more expensive for sure because you're giving them more food. The Cornish cross can be butchered at around 9 to 11 weeks, so that's a pro there. I would say if it's your first time, just do your research and decide on a breed, just go for it. My biggest advice would be to start small though, to start with maybe 10 or 15 chickens for your first time. So here's how we raise them. You've got to think about where you live. We live in sunny Arizona, so what that means is that there are certain times a year that we really can't be raising meat chicks because it's just too hot. Instead, we normally get meat chicks when it is about to turn cold. So we get meat chicks September, October, and that's when it's still warm here. So when they're young, they're gonna need that warmth. And then as they get older, it'll get cooler so that by the time it's butchering time and they're pooping the most and they're the biggest and they're just messy, we won't have so many flies because it'll start to cool down. Also on butchering day, it'll be nice and cool for us. It would be nicer if it was warmer when they were little, and it would be nicer if it got cooler when it was time to butcher. So think about that. So when you're raising meat chicks, it's actually pretty easy because all you're gonna do is provide food and water and let them grow. But then you're gonna need some sort of protection. Even if you live in the city, if you have hawks in the air, owls, they'll snatch them up. So that is probably the biggest pain when it comes to raising chicks in general. And so what you're gonna have to figure out is, okay, I've got my food, I've got my water, I fill those things up every day. Now, how am I gonna keep them protected? Let me show you a few different ways that people keep them protected. For us, when we first start out, we usually keep them in just a small area right on the back of the porch. Somewhere where we can, you know, keep track of them, see how they're doing and everything every day. And then we're gonna put them in our little chicken runs right here. And this is an area that is, we can section off from the main coop, and we have 2 of them. So it's usually plenty. We raised 50 meat chicks this year, and we were able to fit them both in here from about 1 week old to 6 weeks in here. One thing you need to know about chickens is if you're raising them on your property, in your backyard, there's a purpose, right? Why are you doing it? You're doing it because you're hoping that it'll raise healthier meat. Well, part of raising really healthy chickens is having them on grass. You're going to need to have either what's called a chicken tractor or something that you can keep them on grass. Chickens can live in there, and then we pull this thing over every day to a new patch of grass. So I would say the hardest part is keeping them protected from predators. I mean, it's easy to feed and water chickens, just put that out every day. But keeping them protected is a whole other story. The last part of raising chickens is when they are from the 6-week stage till about the 11 or 12-week stage. This is the messy part, but it's also the fun part because now they're old enough, they don't need to have protection. They can go out around your entire yard And so that's what we did. We had them actually in an area right here. And in this area, they were able to peck and scratch at the ground and poop, and the wood chips helped break down the area and make everything just a lot less smelly. If you have really strong smell, you might want to put that. It's called sweet PDZ, and it's a natural mineral that will help absorb the smell of chicken poo. So we had them in this area, but we also let them out. So this is where they would go in most of the day, but then they were also allowed to go out in the grass and go wherever they wanted around our whole yard. And that was probably the way that they stayed the most healthy, because chickens really need lots of fresh air and lots of new ground for them to stay healthy. And the last part is the butchering. In some ways it's the easiest, and in some ways it's the hardest, because it's kind of nice that you're not having to feed them anymore and water them, and you can just go and butcher them and get them in your fridge, but there is a process to it as well. After you butcher your chickens, you're gonna put them in a bag and put them in your fridge and age them for 2 to even up to 7 days. And I know that sounds crazy, because a lot of times when we buy chicken from the store, we think, gosh, like if I put it in my fridge, in 3 days it starts to spoil. But that's not how it is with fresh chicken. With fresh meat that has just been butchered, it has to tenderize first. Crazy, right? And then you'll take it out, and then you can freeze it. And when we freeze it, we like to vacuum pack. So we have them completely vacuum sealed like this, and this is what is going to keep them really fresh. They are going to last a really long time. They're going to be nice and tender, and it's homegrown, free-range, organic chicken. If you've ever gone to the store and tried to find really healthy meat, you'll notice it's really expensive. So if I were right now to drive down to Whole Foods and purchase a whole chicken, it would probably cost me $25 for a chicken. Whereas if you raise one yourself, it's going to probably cost you $9 for a chicken, which is about $1.75 a pound. So it is beneficial to raise them at home, and that's for organic, pasture-raised, free-range chicken. We have an acre here, and you could easily do it with 1/4 of an acre. So I'll put a link to all of my articles about raising meat chickens and about butchering meat chickens, and you can go ahead and read on those and see how you feel if you want to get started on the process yourself. That's all I got for you today. Start growing your own food. It's amazing. Some of the best stuff you'll ever eat is right from your backyard.